If you're watching this right now, there's probably like a 50% chance that you're fat as fuck, living in your mom's basement. You just play the game all day. You've not talked to any girls ever, and you just smell like straight diarrhea. Well, I got news for you, buddy, because if you're not self aware and you don't understand your surroundings or your lifestyle, you are a CHUD. And CHUD stands for Fat Loser in Basement. Basically, that does not line up with the words, but that's basically just what it means. But I'm not here today to talk shit. I'm not here to make fun of you. I'm not here to tell you, that you're some sort of fat loser or something. And, I'm sure that most people who watch my videos are not chuds. You guys seem like the coolest fucking people. I've been seeing the comments, by the way. Because today, we're going to be talking about me being a chud because I am a former chud and it honestly has opened my eyes to a lot of things. So if you, which I mean, I'd hope if you're watching this, you were alive for the pandemic. Otherwise, get off your mom's phone. It's time to fucking go get some apple juice and take a nap or something. But I would say my chudness really started during quarantine, and it was probably the lowest point of my life. I mean, I could not tell you how just horrible it was for me. And you know what is even more crazy is I started high school. Yep, that's right. I started my freshman year of high school in 2020. And I'm going to be honest, back then, I quite literally lived in my mom's basement. I was chubby as fuck. I just ate snacks all day and played Fortnite. Yes, I was one of those kids. I was a Fortnite kid. And it was like just the most painful time of my life. And at this time I was only 14, so it's kind of like you don't expect a 14-year-old to be rolling in bitches, but that still really rubs off on your mental. And that's the kind of the first thing I want to get to is that like there is no social interaction when you're just a straight up loser chud. Like, bro, I had the lowest self-esteem in my life, bro. I didn't talk to any girls. I had just online friends who I played video games with, and that was it. And like, yeah, I was stuck inside, but even after that for a year, I was still a chud, bro. Like, I wasn't doing anything. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have any friends. Like, I would just sit around and literally play the game all day or just sleep or eat food. Like, I wasn't doing anything productive with my life. And that took the huge, huge toll on my mental health. Like, it really fucked me up for a while, bro, because I didn't know how to get out of it. You know what I mean? And I know there's a lot of people who are in that situation where, it's a lot harder than it seems to get out of it. I understand that, but honestly, it's not. It's not. It seems like it is, but it's not. It's a lot easier to get out of it than you think. Because I want to tell you that, like, I went back to school, right? I went back to school and I started, I got a girlfriend. I started making new friends and I got involved in activities like sports and band and like all that stuff. Yeah, I was a band geek, bro. Don't hate on me. That's right. First chair, French horn, bro. Come on. Come on. Anyways, I started to realize that there was more to offer from real life interaction, right? Because I was stuck inside of the house for a year in my mom's basement, getting chubby, doing nothing with my life, and deteriorating my mental health to a little nub. It just, it completely just changed, bro. All I had to do was just leave the house and go interact with people. And I realized that things could be better for me. Because, during that time, like I just fell down and time again. And, my grandma passed away in that time. And that was very hurtful to me, right? So at the time she passes away, I'm all fucked up, bro. Like, I'm just, that same old chud, behavior, you know what I mean? I was just an online troll. I didn't care about my life. I didn't care about anything anymore. And, she passed away, and that just, like, completely decimated any chance of me wanting to be outside or even have a real life. But, that second year of high school really took a good toll on me, right? Because, I got a girlfriend, then I got another girlfriend, then I got my first job, and I was doing sports, and I was doing activities, and I was just like, I was all over the place, bro. Like, I started to put off the weight. I quit playing the game all day. I quit staying inside. I went outside and hung out with my friends all the time again. Like, things really turned around for me. And that just brought me to this main realization that I'm going to share with you, which is kind of the whole point of the video, that you're not doomed to it. You're not doomed to being a chud. You don't have to be this way. And this is why people hate on you, because you're actively choosing not to change your ways. When you hear people talk about like addicts and stuff, right? You know what I mean? They said they never truly can get clean until they actually want to be clean. And that's the exact same situation to me with being just, a loser, bro. Just being a chud, doing nothing with your life. Like, until you want to make the change, it's nothing's gonna change. You have to actively take the steps and do it. And like, like I said before, like, okay, like you might have that mindset that it's easier said than done, but it's complete opposite. It is easy. It is easier. It's easy to just get done and really just become self-aware. And that's something that I also want to talk about. I unlocked full self-awareness in my life, and that actually didn't change until the end of high school, because there was times and periods where I would go in and out, you know what I mean? I'd still be, in my ways, just sitting around playing the game and whatnot. But once I got to high school and once I got to the end of high school, my senior year, I remember I unlocked full self-awareness. And you might be questioning how is that important? Why does that matter, right? What is that going to do to change me, being jobless, or what is it going to do to change my weight, or, change my behavior or my attitude? Well, I'm going to tell you. So I had this therapist, and I talked to her, weekly throughout high school, due to a lot of, just personal struggles that I won't get into. Also, I'm not going to trauma dump on you guys. That's not what I'm here for. But essentially, I was seeing this therapist, and she told me, she said, I remember she looked at me one day. It was about halfway through the year, halfway through our sessions. And she looked at me and she said, you are the most self-aware person I think I've ever met in my life. And at that time, I didn't think I was. I didn't really grasp self-awareness. I was self-aware about things except for being self-aware, if that makes sense, right? So I was just kind of like asking her, I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, because when you have a problem, you address it and then you fix it, and you know what you need to do, and you know what's wrong. And I was just kind of like puzzled. And so I left that therapy session that day, and I was just kind of like thinking about it, and I'm like, I'm like, what exactly was she really trying to say to me? And then it just clicked. It just clicked. I think maybe I was in my room at my mom's house after school, and I was just sitting on my bed. Maybe I was on TikTok or whatever, right? And it just hit me. Just immediately. I was like, holy shit. I've had the answers all along to all of my problems. That was my first huge transformation, really, into like completely abandoning that chud lifestyle, right? Because I had fixed my ways and I had kind of gotten out of that base lifestyle, but there's still parts of me that were still stuck there, right? Like the doom maxing and the whole, just like doing not much of my life. And it just hit me like a fucking brick. It just hit me like a train. Because when you unlock that full self-awareness, you're able to analyze your problems, and you're able to easily come up with these solutions that you have, usually just unconsciously. You unconsciously just kind of figure it out. And, obviously in this world, there are tons of different problems that people have, right? There's some things that you can't just, come up with a solution and fix it right away, right? But you can come up with steps to, kind of like try things and try different plans. But the thing with having self-awareness is that where your position is at. If you are fucked over, if you're mad, if you're angry, if you were right or if you were wrong. And that is the biggest superpower that you can have with your mind. And, you might be wondering, what does that have to do with being a chud? Well, being a chud, I almost see it as a behavioral problem, right? Something causes you to be that way, and you genuinely just lack motivation. You don't care, you don't have that care. But when you unlock that self-awareness, that's when you start to care. Because not only do you analyze these different problems and things going on in your life, but you also analyze yourself, and when you're right and you're wrong, and you realize, you're like, oh my God, I should care. I should care a lot more than I am right now. And that's what really brought me away from that mindset completely. You know what I mean? That is the most important tool that I ever unlocked in my brain chemistry. Things don't happen overnight, right? You can't just change yourself overnight. You can't just be a different person tomorrow than you were today. That just does not happen. I'm a realist. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and be like, oh, you could go to the gym tomorrow, hit a workout, hit some pre-workout, and, you'll just be a whole different man, bro. No, like, you can change your attitude, and that's the first step. The one thing that you can change overnight is your attitude, and that's the first thing that you need to do to get out of that mindset, right? Because I had this whole attitude, this whole, like, just doom maxing horrible attitude towards the world where I thought, it doesn't matter, I'm just gonna die anyways, you know what I mean? So I might as well just be a lazy fat fucking turd and sit in my mommy's house and play my Xbox. But what you don't realize is that the day that you change that attitude is the day that you change out of that chud. You know what I mean? You don't have to stop playing video games. You don't have to stop eating junk food. You know what I mean? It's just, it's that lifestyle where that is all that consumes you, and that's the only thing that you care about or care to do at all. And I kind of want to laugh here a little bit because I'm thinking about my self-help video that I made a couple days or a week ago, whatever. I made a video about how a lot of these self-help programs and books are a scam, right? And this just proves, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't need that. I didn't need a program or a book or any of that stuff to help me out. You know what I mean? Yes, I had a therapist that did help me out, but genuinely, like, it just took her advice, but I had to do the work. But guess what? That work came really fucking easy when I just let it happen, right? I actually just let the self-awareness happen, and I really just sat down, and it kind of just does the work for you, right? You know what I mean? You just kind of unconsciously realize that there are things that you need to do to fix different things going on in your life, and it makes it 10 times easier. And I will say, like, with self-awareness, that's a hard topic for some people, right? Because when you become more self-aware in your life, that's when you start to really deal with some very, harsh things, right? That's when you learn the most about yourself. You learn the most about yourself. Like me, I became super self-aware, and that just made me more self-aware about things going on in the world as well. I don't want to scare anybody. This is not something that I really want to talk about too much because, I know people are sensitive to that topic, but like death, you know what I mean? Like, it's inevitable. It's something that we're all going to have to go through and like in the afterlife and things like that, right? Those type of things do come with self-awareness. However, it also will help you bring peace to those sort of thoughts because you suppress those sort of things, right? All those bad thoughts, and that's not even just that goes with death or, mortality or anything. All those bad thoughts that you have, when you become self-aware about them and you quit suppressing them, you can finally work through your issues and you can come to terms with them instead of burying them deep down in the back of your brain to where they can just come and scare you in your nightmares. you know that just goes, it goes without saying that will genuinely, like, that will very much help you in your life, when you have nothing to fear anymore, when you have things that aren't causing this anxiety because you understand them now and you can really just deal with them, or find different ways to deal with them. Sometimes, yes, there are things that you can't fully control in your life, and that's going to happen, but you know what, you're self-aware about that, so you at least know if there's something. This is the best advice that I think I ever got in my life. I'm going to tell you guys right now, if there is something that you can do about something, why worry? And if there's nothing you can do about it, why worry? And that's something that I want you guys to really think about, right? Because if you have a problem and there's something that you can do about it, okay, well, why worry? Because you can just do something about it. If there's nothing you can do about it, well, then don't worry about it, right? Because there's nothing you're going to do that's going to change that. And I think that with that type of mentality, it's really going to help you get out of that CHUD mentality. Because, during that time, I wouldn't even say briefs. This is like a 3-year period where I was just a fat, lazy hoe, you know what I'm saying? Just sitting around playing Xbox, eating Doritos. Swear to God, that was my life. Literally playing Black Ops, bro. And what am I doing now? Playing Black Ops for YouTube. But, I think that, during that period, I had the worst mentality in my life. There was a lot of personal issues going on in my life and things that caused me to become a chud, you know what I mean? So that's why I want to say, if you're watching this and you feel like you're part of that category of being a chud, you don't need to go to the fucking gym every day to get out of that. You don't have to, read a fucking novel every week just to get out of that. You know what I'm saying? You just need to, have some more faith in yourself, bro. Have some more faith in your self-worth and just gain more confidence in yourself. That's all it is, right? You know what I mean? Like, go apply for a job, go work somewhere, right? If you're a teenager right now, and you're anywhere from like 14 to like 17, you're in high school, and you haven't had a job or anything, you might be scared to go get a job. Trust me, when I got my first job, I was scared shitless, bro. But if you're about that age, you're about that age where you can start working, right? Just go try to find something, right? Maybe you go work at Walmart or a gas station or McDonald's, or you even work just like part-time, but that'll get you out the house and that'll get you productive. And I don't want to sit here and bash on the other ways of getting out, right? You know what I mean? Going to the gym is a very productive thing. I work out every single day. I do tons of cardio all the time, right? Because I'm a big soda drinker, so I gotta keep my weight. I gotta stay slim. You know what I mean? It's gonna be very dangerous for me. So I understand. I'm in the same boat where I kind of have to work out every day, otherwise I'm just gonna get fat as fuck. But you don't have to, be a gym bro, and you don't have to buy all this pre-workout and creatine or whatever the fuck they just spew out at you. But it is helpful, you know what I mean? It is helpful, because when you gain that physical confidence and you gain, it's work, it's hard work. And that's kind of the whole point of it, right? It's not just the added bonus of having, big muscles or shredded abs or anything. That's not how I see it. I see it as good, hard work that has something positive for my body. You know what I mean? I go on walks and I go on runs every single day. And what that does is that really, benefits my respiratory and my cardiovascular and, other parts of my body. It really benefits that health. And that's something that's super important to me. You know what I mean? And that's something I want to challenge you guys to do, is to find things that are important to you and put some hard work into them. Things that are productive, right? You know what I mean? I'm not saying like, just like, I don't know, like if really sitting around and eating chips is important to you, you might need to just like find some new priorities. But, just find things that you love, or things that really help you feel more productive and feel more comfortable and feel more confident. So, there's different things that you can do, right? Let's just say that you love drawing and you have a passion for it and you'd love to make it a job one day. Bro, literally all you got to do is just draw maybe an hour or two a day. Just keep practicing and practicing. If you love an instrument, right? I play a ton of instruments. I'm a huge music nerd. I love music. It's been a huge passion of mine my entire life. I practice my instruments every single day. But you know what? That also just completely, boosts my confidence, and it does stimulate your mind, you know what I mean? And it stimulates your mind in a way more productive and healthy way, because you're doing something productive and something that's actually, somewhat benefiting you, right? So, it's just, the point is like, you don't have to, do what everybody else is doing to get out of being a chud. And that's like a big point of this video, you know what I mean? Because I really don't want to sit here and dog on people for falling into it when I've been there myself. And that's why I'm spitting some advice here. And I think it's also important to gain some sort of focus, right? Because what a lot of people don't have, that I didn't have when I was in that chud mentality, was I had no focus in my life at all. You know what I mean? I was just going through the motions, doing the next thing after the next thing without a fucking care in the world. I didn't care about anything. And I've spoken on this once before, but it's the TikTok brain. You know what I mean? Especially during COVID. I know we were all just sitting in the house, just doom scrolling, bro. Just straight up doom scrolling Instagram Reels and TikTok. And I want to tell you that that's what killed your focus too. You know what I mean? You were able to just sit around and do nothing but play video games and skip your virtual school and just watch TikTok. And you lost all focus because you didn't have to focus on anything other than just waking up, taking a shower. That's if you were taking showers. I know a lot of people who were not doing that, which y'all are fucking nasty, bro. I heard some horror stories from COVID. But you didn't have anything to worry about. And then you had to just kind of like get dropped back into real life just, off a dime, and you had to, just start focusing on things, but you couldn't. And so now you're stuck just living that same old fucking lazy, shitty life, but now it's actually having consequences. And focus is the most important thing that you can really gain and have when it comes to making a difference in your life, because you don't really know how to focus on one thing at a time, right? And when you get into the professional world, whatever you do, eventually you have to focus on multitasking, right? But at this current time, a lot of people, with this constant feed of information in your brain, you can't focus on any one thing, because it's like you just watched 100 videos yesterday all talking about different topics, showing different people and different things, and your brain physically cannot retain that. Your brain can only retain like 7 to 8 pieces of information at a time, right? You know what I mean? So you're just completely abusing it and giving it no rest to just focus on one thing. Whatever you do, to get out of this mindset, right? Whatever you do, whether it's go to the gym or draw or play your instrument, those are just examples of things that help people out. You need to spend a lot of your time just focusing on that. You know what I mean? You don't need, when you're on the treadmill, you don't need to be watching a YouTube video, or when you're playing your instrument, unless you're playing along to some music, right? But you don't need like Taylor Swift playing while you're shredding some Metallica on your guitar. Like, that makes no sense, right? Because your brain is not built to focus on all those things going on at once, and that's how you get overstimulated. That's how overstimulation works, and that's why you hear a lot of people talking about how they're overstimulated all the time, because they have zero focus left in their brain chemistry. And so they just, their brain genuinely freaks out when these things happen, because your brain's like a muscle. It's like it's kind of like, I want to say it's like kind of like the battery in the car. It's powering everything, you know what I mean? Or like the motor, like it's running everything, and you're just completely stressing it and just adding new parts that don't need it. And so it's being stretched thin, and then eventually it's just going to shit out on you. That was the best I could come up with right now. I'm sorry, guys. But it's really just that easy, right? You just really need to be more self-aware about your focus, and that's where this all links in, right? Because these are things that I learned that changed my life. You know what I mean? Nowadays, I sit down and I will read through 5 chapters of a book at one time, or 10 chapters. I'll sit down and play my instrument for 2 hours straight. Or, when I make these videos, I don't do anything else. I don't have anything playing in the background or in my headphones. No, like I'm literally listening to white noise while I talk. That's what this is, right? While I'm just watching the gameplay. And so, I just feel like I've gained so much focus in the past, 2 years, ever since I got some advice on being self-aware. And, that was the biggest thing that I learned, was once I was able to gain that and gain self-awareness of my life and the things going on, I was able to change for the better with zero effort, little to no effort, man. Like, I just started taking walks, you know what I mean? And I just focus on my walk, you know what I mean? And I get excited because I'm like, okay. And that's what I think about. I think about how my body's going to look better. I'm going to feel better, and that's what it really comes down to, man. I play my instrument and I know I'm getting better in the songs and the scales that I'm working on. And I'm like, I figure out new things while I'm doing it. And then I remember that because that's the only thing going on in my brain at the time. But, that's pretty much all I really wanted to say. I feel like now I'm kind of just like that I've said all I need to say about this. But yeah, I hope you guys can take something from this video. If there's anything that I didn't, describe well enough or explain well enough, please let me know, because I am interested in hearing some critique. I've been listening to you guys. I've been reading the comments. And, I just want to say, by the way, I'm super grateful for you guys. I appreciate you guys supporting me and, getting my last video to 1K. I love you guys so much for that. And, I couldn't do it without you. And I'm glad that I'm, kind of making a good impression for a lot of people. But, as always, that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys later.